Politically, silence is consent since Roman times. This means if you vote, you consented to the government, but if you vote against the candidate who won, you have still spoken. But if you didn't vote, then 6 or 8 months down the road, you have no backsies. You can't go back and say, well, if I would have voted, I would have voted for the other guy, and I didn't like what he did. There's no backsies. It's you were silent, and you are said to have consented. But in the original Latin, it is, he who could have spoken and did not is said to have consented. Well, if you couldn't speak, if your silence is coerced, then coerced silence is not consent. You couldn't say anything. So the First Amendment right to freedom of speech, our right to dissent, is our most important right. In the First Amendment, we have 5 rights like that. We have the right to freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, the right peaceably to assemble, and the right to access the courts. Freedom of the press is the government's obligation in a reciprocal sense to tell us what they plan to do, to inform us of their agenda. If we voted for one agenda and they had another agenda they didn't tell us, then we really couldn't reasonably be said to have consented to that. We consented to something else. It was a trick. On balance, the free press is also supposed to publish governmental mistakes, even if it embarrasses a politician or two. Freedom of religion is why we came to the New World from England. We ran away from religious oppression to be free to believe what we want to believe. It is freedom of speech to speak your religion. On balance, the religion shouldn't run the country, and the country shouldn't run the religion. They are separate. The right peaceably to assemble is actually in protest to King George's Riot Act, where he said no more than 12 people could assemble, and if there were 12 people there, they could be said to be mutinying or doing something. Sedition is what they were accused of. The Founding Fathers got away from that, and they didn't want to go back to it. And the final right is access to the courts, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. If you make a law, you have to allow people to enforce the law. If you can't access the courts, if there's some reason you can't file a lawsuit by rule, then why have a law at all? There's no reason for it. So that's the First Amendment, and that's the first right in the Bill of Rights.